Moscow, Idaho. This small, peaceful college town was rocked by a series of brutal murders that shook the community to its core. The victims were 4 young college students, targeted by a sadistic killer who seemed to have struck at random. The investigation that followed would reveal a web of lies, deceit, and violence that no one could have imagined. Join us as we explore the chilling case of the Idaho college student killings and uncover the shocking truth behind one of America's most baffling mysteries. Moscow was home to 6 students from the University of Idaho: Madison, Kaylee, Dylan, Bethany, Zaina, and Ethan. Ethan and Zaina were in a relationship. The 6 friends were very close. They were known for their love of fun and life. However, on November 13th, 2022, the state police received a 911 call from someone saying that one of their roommates was unresponsive. After receiving the call, the police arrived and were shocked by the horrific sight they found at the home. Blood could be seen leaking from the outside of the house. The scene inside was even more terrifying, with 4 dead bodies that had been brutally stabbed to death. Before we dive into the details, let us give you an idea about the house layout. It's a 3-story house, built on uneven ground which required 2 main doors. Dylan and Bethany lived on the ground floor. Zaina and Ethan had the 2nd floor, while Maddie and Kaylee shared the top floor. When the police assessed the 2nd floor, they found Zaina and Ethan's stabbed bodies. The bodies of Kaylee and Maddie, who occupied the same room, were discovered on the top level. Tragic as this catastrophe is, it's surprising that the other 2 friends who lived on the ground floor, Bethany and Dylan, survived. The police interviewed them to figure out how they managed to survive and to establish if they had anything to do with the crime. The police sent the bodies to the forensic department and began interrogating Dylan and Bethany. All they could say was that they had been sleeping at the time of the incident and had not heard or felt anything until they awoke and went up to the 2nd floor. To some, it seemed odd that they couldn't have heard the brutal attack taking place. What's more perplexing is that Kaylee's dog was living in the house, but he didn't bark. During the days while the survivors were being questioned, one of the university's students called the police and told them that he had previously lived in the house on the 1st floor. He stated that he couldn't hear anything on the other top floors. After the investigation, police confirmed this story, and that the killer most likely entered the building through the 2nd floor's door and didn't notice the lower floor where the survivors were. Later, the authorities determined that the survivors were most likely asleep during the attack and were not suspects. Many students stated that they no longer felt safe in the town. Every night before going to bed, they were afraid that what happened to those students would happen to them. Also, many students expressed their desire to leave the town for a safer location. After the autopsies, defensive wounds were discovered on some of the victims' bodies, the majority of which were on Zaina's body. It was clear that Zaina fought off her murderer for a long time before surrendering to death. On the other hand, the police stated that Kaylee's injuries were the most severe and brutal of them all, which indicated that the killer was targeting Kaylee when he went into the house to commit the murder. The police were hampered in their efforts to collect fingerprints due to the scene being in a well-known party house. The house was heavily trafficked by partygoers, and even when the residents were not present, any stranger could enter the house. Because of this, the police were unable to identify any fingerprints they found as belonging to the murderer or any of the party guests. The police found no strong evidence except a DNA sample, but it did not show up in any police databases, which made the investigation even more difficult. During the investigation at the crime scene, no signs of a break-in were discovered, indicating that the killer entered the house normally. Each room in the house had an entry code which would normally indicate that the person who entered the house was close with the inhabitants. But, as previously stated, The house was open to all, and the entry codes of the rooms were known to many people. Kaylee's father believed that his daughter and her friend Madison were the targets because they were on the same bed when they were murdered. Their rooms were on the 3rd floor, and the easiest way to enter the house was through the door on the 2nd floor. So the killer entered through the 2nd floor door, where he encountered Ethan and Zaina, and he had to kill them to get to the 3rd floor. Then he murdered Kaylee and Madison after reaching the 3rd floor. Kaylee's injuries were also deeper and more severe than the others. At this point, we need to know more about the victims. First, let's talk about Kaylee. Kaylee was 21 years old and was supposed to graduate in early December 2022. She intended to move out to Texas because she had a job offer from a marketing firm there. Kaylee had an ex-boyfriend named Jake. They ended their relationship on good terms and remained friends. They also raised a dog together, the same dog that was in the house during the murder. The second victim was Madison. Madison was 21 years old and studied marketing. Her grandmother stated that she was a sweet soul who cared about her friends and family. She also had a boyfriend who described her as the sweetest person anyone could ever meet. She was excited to graduate the next year and was eager to travel and see the world. Zaina was the third victim. She was 20 years old and she despised drama and disputes. She preferred to spend quality time with her friends and her boyfriend Ethan, who was the fourth victim. He was 20 at that time, and he was known for making everyone laugh, and began dating Zaina a year ago. The day before the incident, on November 12th, the friends had spent the morning together playing football. Later in the afternoon, the group went their separate ways. Ethan and Zaina went to an on-campus party around 8 or 9 p.m., while Kaylee and Madison went to a nightclub where they stayed from about 11 p.m. to 1:30 a.m., after which they stopped at a food truck at 1:41 a.m. that was owned by a 26-year-old man named Joseph. While working on the food truck, Joseph used to live stream on Twitch. Kaylee and Maddie appeared on the live stream while they waited for their order for about 10 minutes. Many people were standing around normally, but there was one suspicious person among them who seemed creepy. That suspicious guy attempted to approach the girls nervously, but the girls took their order and left. He followed them until they took a private car and returned home. According to Joseph, this stranger was just standing there and did not order any food, and the girls did not appear to be afraid or in danger. According to some witnesses, the man appeared normal and non-threatening. Now the police had two suspects to investigate: the suspicious man at the food truck and the private car driver. Kylie and Madison were seen returning home by security cameras at 1:56 a.m. At 1:45 a.m., cameras captured Zaina and Ethan returning home. Regarding Dylan and Bethany, they spent the day with their families and returned to the house before everyone else at around 1 a.m. The investigation showed that Kaylee called her mother after midnight, and she invited her mother for dinner to celebrate her birthday. She was very excited. A few hours before the murder took place, Kaylee sent her mother a photo of her with all of her friends. It's heartbreaking that her mother didn't realize at the time that she was hearing her daughter's voice for the last time. The police discovered something else in Kaylee's call logs. Kaylee called her ex-boyfriend Jake 7 times, who was also a student at the same university. However, he did not answer any of the calls. The first call was made at 2:26 a.m., and the last call was received at 2:52 a.m. Madison, Kaylee's roommate, also called Jake 3 times, first at 2:44 a.m. and the last at 2:52 a.m. Jake was now the third suspect and was brought in for questioning. Jake looked devastated by what had occurred to Kaylee and told the police that he didn't answer the calls because he was asleep. According to Kaylee's family, Jake had a great relationship with Kaylee, and even after their breakup, they remained on good terms. The family also speculated that Kaylee called him because they were good friends and raised a dog together. After further investigation, the police discovered no evidence against Jake. Jake's DNA was tested against the sample from the crime scene, and they didn't match, so Jake was removed from the list of suspects. Police also identified the stranger who appeared on the live stream near the girls and tracked down the driver who drove the girls home. But it turned out that neither of them had any idea about what happened to the girls. There was no evidence linking them to the murder, and so they were also removed from the suspect list. On November 28th, a black glove was found outside the home in the snow, although it is unclear if it was there the night of the murders or dropped there later. Further findings led the police to believe that it was not a crime of passion. Normally, in crimes of passion, the killer does not conceal his tracks, but it appears that the killer made certain that no evidence was left behind. The manner, depth, and frequency of the stabs, on the other hand, indicated that the victims were being targeted, but the reason remained unknown. Kaylee's family mentioned that she complained about someone stalking her, but the family didn't know by who. The police and FBI worked hard to find this stalker when they heard about an incident that occurred in mid-October. Kaylee was at a company, but after she left, she was followed by two men from the same company. One of them continued to follow her after a crossroads, walking slowly behind her until he left her alone. Police were able to track down these men and question them about their relationship with Kaylee and why they followed her. They claimed that they worked for a commercial company that needed to hire some females for that work, but they left Kaylee alone when they realized she wasn't interested. There was no evidence that this was the man Kaylee complained to her parents about. The police and FBI investigated the victims' relationships with each other at the house, as well as their relationships with others. They also examined their phone calls and messages for clues to the murderer. Police later discovered that the murder weapon was a razor-sharp knife. Although the weapon itself wasn't found, this was an important discovery, because police searched for people who purchased this type of knife. Police also searched those who had previously attended a party at the house. Police found crucial evidence later. They received a call on the 13th of November from someone reporting a disturbance in the area. Police responded at about 3 a.m. and interviewed some guys who looked drunk, when a police camera captured video of the house where the murder occurred. What's terrifying is that the murderer was most likely committing the murders at the exact moment inside the house behind the officer. A white Hyundai car, model 2011 to 2013, was reported to the police. The car was seen around the area and was thought to be the killer's because it was caught on camera at a gas station that was a 4-minute drive from the crime scene. Police posted pictures of the car in the hopes that someone could identify it. Police received thousands of messages and emails, and almost 22,000 vehicles were reported and searched. One of the reported cars belonged to a man in Pennsylvania named Brian Christopher Kohberger. After being placed under surveillance for several days and having his car searched on December 30th, 2022, Brian Kohberger was arrested by Pennsylvania police as the main suspect in the murders. Brian is a 28-year-old PhD student at Washington State University who studied criminal justice and criminology. He had graduated with a master's degree from Washington State University and was also working as an assistant teacher at the university. Brian liked to keep to himself, and those around him claimed to know little about him. His next-door neighbor said although she rarely talked to Brian, she did hear him walking around well past midnight and washing things. During the investigation, a significant discovery was made in relation to Brian's chosen field of study. It came to light that he had recently participated in a research project that aimed to understand the effects of emotional and psychological traits on criminal decision-making while committing a murder. The study was made public on the university's website and piqued the interest of investigators. He had also enrolled in a class on serial killers, taught by a forensic expert doctor named Catherine. Brian was visiting his parents in Pennsylvania when he was arrested. However, the night before, He was in an area only 15 minutes outside of Moscow, indicating he had been close to the crime scene. Police searched Brian's Pennsylvania house for 12 hours, as well as his computer and car. He was interviewed after his arrest, but he denied any involvement in the crime. Brian looked calm and confident. The victim's family stated that they didn't know him and had never seen him before. However, the police discovered a connection between Brian and Kaylee, but it was not discussed yet. Brian was later turned over to Moscow police. The police investigation was continued with the assistance of the FBI and the general public. Then, Brian was charged with burglary and 4 counts of first-degree murder. Brian is currently on trial with a preliminary probable cause hearing scheduled for June 26 at the Latah County Courthouse. The Idaho college student killings case is a heartbreaking tragedy that has left a lasting impact on society. The loss of young lives highlights the urgent need for greater awareness, education, and resources to prevent domestic violence and support victims. Thank you for joining us in examining this dark chapter in history. Give us your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.